Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Duke Oishi.
And I'm your co-host, Nicoel Hori.
In our show this time, we'll visit the 2014 legislative briefing by the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum at the state capitol.
Hundreds of people showed up, and the Capitol auditorium was packed.
Representative Chris Lee, chair of the House Committee on Energy and a great proponent of clean energy, convened the briefing.
Who would have thought just 10 years ago that today we would be ahead of our clean energy initiative targets, that we would be closing in on 20% renewable on our quest to be 70% by 2030. There's never been a year I've actually been more optimistic about this, and I'm still new to this game. But I see us looking forward, I look around, all the players lining up hand in hand on issues to move ahead together, which previously were polarizing, which held us back. This year in particular, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things as we move ahead. Jay asked me to be very brief, so I'm going to take these very brief 2 minutes and just go through a couple of the big issue areas I think we expect to see.
Mike Hamnet, co-chair of the forum, opened what they called the update panel.
We're still importing over 40 million barrels of crude oil a month, and we moved the needle on some things, but we've still got a long way to go. At a more recent forum summit, we identified several major decisions that need to be made. One is whether we should have a seabed cable connecting Oahu to the neighbor islands. The forum was unable to get a consensus on that. That discussion is now before the PUC in a docket that they're handling. We also identified liquefied natural gas as an option for helping to bring down the cost of energy and actually to facilitate the development of renewables. Again, the forum has been unable to get a consensus on backing for LNG. We were able to get people together, stakeholders together, to talk about that. HECO and Hawaii Gas are now looking at the feasibility of that, and eventually that'll end up before the PUC.
Although we're a small group of islands in the vast Pacific, we're part of a global energy community. So we asked an expert in global energy, Dr. Kong Wu of Facts Global Energy, to tell us about the global energy market and how it affects Hawaii.
We're dominated not only by fossil fuel, but also by oil. So that is a unique feature of us. We have no gas, we have no nuclear and other things. So the dominance of oil is very unique for Hawaii. And if you look at the overall energy picture, is about 86% since we consider transportation fuels. If you look at power generation, it's at 73%. Of course, this number is a little bit, we heard from Representative Lee that we're moving towards 20%. That's really good news. This only shows 13% power generation from renewable, but today maybe 15-16% around that range, and we're moving towards a bit kind of a better sort of a future.
The forum has been working hard to marshal data that will help us understand where we are and where we're going. Freedman, chair of the forum's Regulatory Reform Working Group, spoke about his group and also rolled out the Hawaii Clean Energy Status Report.
We now have up on the forum's website a link to this. It has the clean energy metrics we've developed as a result of our ongoing project, and as well as a status report, which is a subset. And the second thing I'm going to do is, by way of showing just a few glimpses of what's on there, kind of a presentation on the look at where we are right now, which is the purpose. It's not forward-looking. This whole project is to look at how can we figure out if we're moving the needle on the meter, if we're actually attaining the objectives that we're in this business of clean energy for. So, click. So, first is the good news. And the good news is primarily in the electric sector. With the implementation of energy efficiency and renewable generation represented in the top bars on here, the amount of fossil fuel generation being used in the electric sector is decreasing.
To be a model for the world, we need to build our own energy industry. Don Lippert of the Energy Accelerator, a program under PICTER, Pacific Informational Center for High Technology Research, had some encouraging news.
We like to look at it as this sort of exponential increase in many of the good things that we want to see in our economy and in clean energy. So many of you know that Maurice Kaya and I have been working on innovation here for a little over 4 years now. And it's really an effort to say, as we transform this economy and as we really move off of oil and into clean energy, how can we not only do that by importing technologies, but also by growing technology and companies here? And it's a pretty tough task, but we have really good news, and I think we're going to have a really exciting next year as well. This chart, I think, while it shows progress and a lot of encouraging news, also comes with a challenge, which we see kind of grouped at the upper right corner of the slide, which is how do we manage all of these new renewables and new resources that have come onto our grid and our system? And our thesis is that we are not going to be able to do the next increment with the same technologies that we have today where we got here. It's going to take a whole new slice of technology and innovative companies and entrepreneurs to get there.
We also heard from Rick Rocheleau of the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, HNEI. His program addresses energy policy and also applied research.
It was funded by the barrel tax, and I think provides a really valuable tool and some insights into where we're going. So basically, this is a tool that GE uses, and it's similar to what utilities use other places. We've developed a very high fidelity model of the islands. It's a production cost model. So basically, if you assume that you have certain units available that run on fuels, that can include solar and wind and geothermal and anything else you want to include, wave as well, you can integrate those into the model. The systems get dispatched at minimum cost. It goes through hour by hour for the entire year, looking at what resources are available, what all the run rules and requirements are for the utility, what reserve requirements are. So really complicated. I'm not going to get into the detail of that. You can go on our website. You can look at GE's website. But what we wanted to do here was to take it a step further than we had before and push two things. Push a higher penetration of renewables overall and also address the economics more directly.
Then we went to the main part of our program, the part we called Discussion and Proposals, to take a look at what's holding us up and what we need to do in the 2014 session.
There's the barrel tax, modernization of the grid, the inter-island cable, local biofuels, LNG, and transportation.
We heard from government, that is, the State Energy Office, the Public Utilities Commission, the Consumer Advocate, the neighbor island counties, and also from the environmental community and from industry.
First, we heard from Mark Glick of the State Energy Office in DBET. He's in charge of the state's energy policy and oversees all the different components.
We want to see the barrel tax sunset extended from 2015, which it currently is, expire last day of the session or last day of the fiscal year in 2015. We want that extended to 2030 to match the goals that have been set under the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, the RPS, the entire portfolio of activities, including transportation, which we want to take a fresh look at. We also want to raise the budget ceiling for the Energy Security Special Fund by $1.5 million. And these funds have already been collected. They're sitting in the Energy Security Special Fund. We actually asked for that authority to spend it last year, but we're revisiting that this year, and we hope it will be approved. So really, that's the primary extent. There's some other ceilings that have to do with our green energy market securitization program to reflect the fact that we're in a new fiscal year, and we simply want to move the authorization, there's ceiling, to be able to have an additional $50 million of authority for fiscal 15.
PUC Chair Mina Morita told us where we are, where we're going, and what issues should be considered this session.
One of the things that I want to emphasize is Hawaii's electricity transformation is a systems transformation. So there's no one action that's going to affect the transformation, but there's several main objectives that we're trying to accomplish. And three of them are to increase the use of clean, competitively priced indigenous resources, minimize the use of expensive fossil fuels, and the third is increase efficiencies and productivity in all aspects in an effort to provide affordable rates, reliable service, and excellent consumer value. And the work of the PUC can be divided up into 4 main work groups. One of the major dockets that we're working on right now is the decoupling investigation to address utility cost recovery. And, the questions that we're asking in this docket are really, do we have the right incentives in place?
Passionate members of the environmental community were also heard. One such group is the Sierra Club. Caitlin Pomerantz, its conservation program coordinator.
I want to tell you a story. It's quick and it's relevant because it's the story of us. It starts in the 1970s when we experienced massive disruptions to the oil supply, and suddenly there was a lot of pressure to get off oil, but no one knew exactly how that was going to happen. There were a lot of big ideas, there were some experiments, but it was still speculative. No one knew what the timetable was going to look like. Flash forward to the 1980s, and there were still only maybe 300 PV systems scattered around the state, and people said, one day we'll get off oil. In the 1990s, hybrids came on the market, and suddenly it started to seem actually possibly feasible to transition away from oil. In the 2000s, boom, it started to happen. Technology proliferated, prices plummeted, popularity soared, and innovations took off in leaps and bounds. 2014. We have officially reached the moment in time at which clean energy is cheaper than conventional.
Jeff Ono is the state's consumer advocate. He represents our interests before the PUC on issues like the undersea cable and LNG.
So first, undersea cable. 2012 legislative session, you passed SB 2785, which became Act 165. Last year, the Public Utilities Commission opened an investigation into the Maui-Oahu undersea cable. Comments were provided by various parties, including the Consumer Advocate's Office, but also from DBED and Nextera and Hawaiian Electric. And what you're seeing here is a summary of the analysis that was done by the Consumer Advocate's Office, DBED, and Nextera that basically show that the net present value is benefit ratepayers by having the undersea cable. And it's mainly in fuel cost savings. But it depends upon the assumed cost of the cable. And certain assumptions have been made. We don't know what the actual cost would be.
Scott Siu of Hawaiian Electric talked about the utility of the future, modernizing the grid, and dealing with technical challenges.
When I thought about my remarks today, I'm going to pick up on a theme that you've been hearing many of the earlier speakers address, and it is about modernization of our system, modernization of our grid. But I want to take that even a little bit further, because to me, what this is all about, 2014, 2015, is modernization of how we approach our decision-making when it comes to the energy system. So let me take us back a bit. I think you saw in Don's slides, you saw the tremendous progress that has been made here in Hawaii in terms of advancing the ball forward with clean energy. Since 2008, this exponential growth in terms of renewable energy, all of our focus over the last 5 years has been how do we move aggressively? How do we get off of the fossil fuel? How do we increase our amount of renewable generation? Well, surprisingly, and I would have never thought this as we were all living through those 5 years, but that was the easy stuff.
Ben Sullivan is the energy coordinator from Kauai, the only county not served by the Hawaiian Electric companies. He spoke for the other counties too.
Hey, we're making progress in the electricity sector, but we're still using more fuel than we used to use, and it's because, in significant part, the ground transportation sector and others. I think we got maybe one slide ahead of what I wanted to. I apologize. Can you go back one? Thank you. So you're seeing Mayor Carvalho there in a Nissan Leaf. He's only been in that Leaf once, and he will probably never get in it again. It was a tight fit. But what I want to say about this photo is that, he's really happy with the progress, and he's really embraced electric vehicles, and it's part of our policy now to really push the electric vehicle piece of the transportation puzzle forward. We owe a debt to DBET to really helping us get those in place, and we're appreciative of that, and we've really taken it on, and it's become part of our plan. For larger vehicles, the county is currently actively looking at the opportunity to use methane from our landfill to power some of our vehicles. That's another thing that we're really excited about. We believe that renewable compressed natural gas as well as biodiesel have a real place in solving the transportation fuel puzzle.
Kelly King of Pacific Biodiesel shared the industry perspective on biofuels.
As far as the industry goes, when you look at what the state goals are and how everything fits in, biofuel definitely, local biofuel production definitely supports our clean energy goals. And where we're at with transportation, and as has been indicated in earlier talks, is that we're not ahead of the game in transportation. We're very far behind. I know you can't read all of these words, but just to focus on a couple of them, the ground transportation goals include reducing petroleum use by 70%, and that equals about 385 million gallons per year. So that's all of the petroleum fuel that we're using. With transportation accounting for 49.3% of total energy consumption in Hawaii, including 28.2% for just ground transportation, finding sources of renewable fuels will be crucial for decreasing our dependence on petroleum. So the next piece is below is the study that was done in 2011 by DBED on biofuels. It was actually mandated by the state.
We asked Representative Sylvia Luke, Chair of the House Finance Committee, and Senator David Ige, Chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, to tell us about the state's fiscal condition and how we can keep clean energy on track.
Because the state has not paid its portion of the unfunded liability, our last calculation was that the state owes $13 billion to potential retirees, and that's $13 million we haven't been paying for. So when you look at that amount that's looming for our future generation, you know, the $800 million that we are currently looking at as a carryover balance, that's a drop in the bucket. Last year, you know, thanks to Senator Ige and the members of the legislature, for the first time in the history of the state, we have made prepayment to bring down that unfunded liability. So the actuarial study that we'll see this year will reduce the $13 billion to something lower. But if we don't continue to address that and pay down our future debt,
we know that we're in this transformation. There are lots of moving parts in the system. We've talked about biofuels. We've talked about changing the energy mix. You know, we know we're going from imported oil to some other fuel. I think what we're trying to do and what we need your help is really identifying those transformational investments that really can stand the long haul. How do you get to a different energy mix for the electric utility so that we can move to renewables from the imported oil? And what core platform would support the various fuels that become part of the mix? You know, what kinds of policy changes make sense from the broader perspective? I think we all understand how quickly technology is changing.
Senator Mike Gabbard, Chair of the Senate Energy Committee, has been a longtime advocate for clean energy, energy efficiency, and local renewables. He delivered closing remarks.
As some of the leaders in the clean energy arena, we're constantly going in circles asking the question, who should be leading the charge and making this happen? The governor, the legislature, the PUC, the counties, the utilities, or our energy nonprofits. To me, all of us have an important role to play, and we must work together closely and be on the same page, because after all, this is a kako endeavor that we're all engaged in. But considering the past year and the big challenges that have increasingly become front and center here on the mainland, with the integration of distributed generation, it makes it clear to me that we are unlikely to be the ones to get us to that mango on that highest branch. Today, we use our smartphones, our iPads, our social media, things that weren't around a mere 5 or 6 years ago. And it was the Steve Jobs and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world who made these things happen. So from my perspective, it's going to take these kinds of entrepreneurs who will actually reach those luscious mangoes at the top and bring them down to the ground level, allowing us to get to our HCEI goals and beyond. And that's why I'm stoked to see what the Energy Accelerator, our clean tech incubator, is doing.
It was a valuable discussion for the attendees, good for the forum for putting it together, good for the speakers who helped us understand, and good for those who attended, especially the legislators themselves. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech streams video and audio of all of our shows live on the internet from 1 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv.
And now, here's our weekly ThinkTech news.
Aloha, Jenna Rodriguez for ThinkTech News. Hawaii has had difficulty in developing diversified agriculture. Should it take a look at vertical farms? With vertical farms, food can be grown year-round in the middle of a city in abandoned warehouses and high-rise buildings, reducing the need for carbon-emitting transportation of produce. In a vertical farm, the plants are grown in racks and fed nutrients by water-conserving, soil-free hydroponic systems lit by LEDs. Control software can move plant racks so each gets even light and water. Vertical farms make food more secure as well, because production can continue even in extreme weather, and as long as farmers can protect their plants from pests, they don't need herbicides or insecticides. Vertical farms also conserve water. By recycling water with dehumidifiers, vertical farms can use 98% less water than conventional farming. Vertical farms can look after multiple farms remotely by using apps. They can monitor equipment and control nutrients and soil balance by smartphone. This reduces labor costs, making them more competitive. Most vertical farms rely on natural light. In Singapore, Sky Green Farms does not need artificial light. Its 4-story glass-sided farm has mobile racks that rotate slowly through sunnier floors of the building. In Kyoto, Nuveg is windowless. Its LED lighting is tuned to 2 kinds of chlorophyll, one using red light and the other blue. It produces 6 million heads of lettuce a year that way. But electric bills can be high. LEDs are only 28% efficient, which keeps the cost of produce high and prevents vertical farms from competing where cheap vegetables are abundant. And the latest research shows that plants don't need light around the clock. All you need to do is provide light from an artificial dawn through to an artificial dusk. Vertical farms are growing worldwide. DARPA has an 18-story farm in Texas producing GMO plants that make proteins useful in vaccines. Ironically, the nuclear accident in Fukushima led to vertical farming because much of the farmland in the area can no longer be used. Jenna Rodriguez for ThinkTech News.
Aloha. I'm Nicoel Hori with the ThinkTech commentary. The PUC has established an investigative docket to determine the advisability of an undersea cable connecting the Oahu and Maui electrical grids. It has scheduled public meetings on both Oahu and Maui to invite comments on the proposal. The PUC is investigating whether a transmission cable between the 2 islands is in the public interest and whether the benefits to ratepayers would exceed the costs of the cable, which DBET estimates would be $700 million. The PUC also wants to know about development risks and how they would be mitigated. With the remarkable increase in PV in the islands and the availability of new grid technologies, it may be possible for each island to generate renewables that meet its own demand, and to have separate renewable grids for each island instead. At the same time, an island that depends heavily on a source of renewables, such as PV, may be vulnerable to local changes in the weather or an unanticipated problem with that single method of energy generation. The ultimate question for the PUC, then, is not simply whether an undersea cable is good for Hawaii, but how we can achieve layered redundancy for a resilient statewide system. ThinkTech believes that a great state needs ample power distribution, and that the proper approach is to start with this undersea cable, not only to bring the separate island grids and the state together, but as part of a strategy to achieve the security and safety of redundant systems. I'm Nicoel Hori with this ThinkTech commentary. Mahalo.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook, Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
The Foreign Trade Zone, operated by the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, encourages international trading in Hawaii and brings the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs.
Okay, Nicoel, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like JFI Dell does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
Definitely, Duke. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be an underwriter, a sponsor, or a volunteer, and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Duke Oishi. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Nicoel Hori. See you next time.